New York City, 1972. In a world built by violence, she brings silence, and silence makes them listen. No one dares to interrupt her. Rumor says she owns the docks, the clubs, and even the cops. Yet, no one's ever seen her face. Who is she? And how did she climb to the top without spilling a single drop of blood? What if the most feared figure in the American underworld was someone no one even knew existed? As thunder rolls over the city, a legend takes her first breath in the dark. They called her the ghost of Wall Street. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no trail. The men she met either prospered or vanished. There was no in-between. She didn't threaten. She offered power, protection, freedom from the old rules. To them, she wasn't a woman. She was a storm dressed in silk. And when she walked away, the world shifted quietly behind her. Behind every legend lies a pattern of fear. The FBI began connecting dots. Names of mobsters suddenly cooperating. Accounts shifting millions overnight. But the deeper they looked, the less they found. It was as if someone was erasing the evidence as they searched. Frank Daly started to believe they weren't chasing a person, but an idea. She wasn't born into power. She created it. Every connection she made was intentional. Every rumor crafted. While the men around her fought for territory, she was buying the banks that owned the land beneath them. She didn't rule with violence. She ruled with intelligence. And that terrified them more than bullets ever could. But even in her rise, danger waited in silence. One of her allies whispered her name in the wrong ear, and the mob families began to stir. The woman they once admired now threatened their control. The first order was simple. Find her, expose her, destroy her. Yet no one realized they were already too late. She was everywhere and nowhere at once. By 1975, her empire stretched from New York to Los Angeles. Every dollar of dirty money passed through her invisible network, washed clean through art galleries, hotels, and investment firms. To the government, she was a ghost. To the mob, she was their golden ticket. But for Evelyn Moreau, power was never enough. She wanted control over the men who believed they owned the world. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, and the prey writes the rules? Her brilliance lay in simplicity. She turned art into currency, hotels into vaults, and lovers into shields. Every city had a name, a system, a code. Daniel Cross was her bridge to Wall Street, young, ambitious, and dangerously loyal. Together, they built something untouchable, a network so vast even the FBI couldn't trace its source. But loyalty, in her world, was always a temporary currency. The mob bosses watched her rise in silence. Vincent Romano tried to buy her loyalty with promises of protection. But Evelyn didn't need protection. She was the danger they couldn't predict. Her deals came without guns, yet her influence left corpses in boardrooms and panic in banks. She was rewriting the rules of power, and every man in the room knew it. Meanwhile, the FBI was drowning in confusion. Frank Daly led a special task force called Operation Veil. But every file led to another shell company, every suspect to a dead end. Agent Maria Torres was the only one who sensed the truth. That the woman they sought wasn't hiding from them. She was watching them, feeding them false leads, controlling their chase like a puppet master behind the curtain. As her network expanded, whispers began spreading through the underworld. Evelyn Moreau was untouchable. Yet, the higher she climbed, the more enemies she created. Some men plotted revenge. Others plotted her downfall. But none realized the truth. She had already anticipated every betrayal, every bullet, every whisper. And when one of her partners disappeared in the desert, she didn't flinch. She simply smiled and replaced him before sunrise. By 1977, the balance of power in America's underworld began to shift. The five families, The Irish crews and the Russians all found their profits shrinking while Evelyn's kept growing. Her reach had become too large to ignore. The bosses met in secret, whispering her name like a curse. She wasn't part of their world, yet she controlled every piece of it. When loyalty costs lives, who dares to stay loyal? The Italian mob wanted her eliminated. The Irish sought to buy her out. The Russians tried to infiltrate her network. But Evelyn was always ahead. She turned Vincent Romano's men against him, feeding them fake intel that made him appear weak. Within weeks, his empire began to collapse. She didn't need to pull a trigger. She simply whispered in the right ear and watched the world burn. Frank Daly watched the chaos from afar. He realized the mob was crumbling not because of federal pressure, but because of one woman's manipulation. Evelyn had turned their greed into a weapon, but the closer Frank got to understanding her, the more he felt drawn to her brilliance. Was he chasing justice, or was he chasing her? Evelyn's next move was ruthless and poetic. She leaked her own location to draw out the men plotting her death, turning predators into prey. When their cars arrived at the warehouse, they found nothing but smoke and a single reel of film. On it, a message. You can't kill what you can't find. That night, the last alliance of mob families fell apart. Vincent Romano vanished weeks later. Some said he fled to Cuba. Others whispered Evelyn had him buried in concrete beneath his own casino. But one thing was certain. The woman they once underestimated now ruled everything. The underworld wasn't run by force anymore. It was run by fear of a name. Evelyn Moreau had done what no man before her could. She united the criminal world under silence. By the late 1970s, Evelyn's empire was flawless on paper, but crumbling in shadows. Her most trusted men began vanishing. Money went missing. The illusion of control started slipping through her hands like smoke. For the first time, the woman who could predict everyone's next move was blindsided by her own creation. In the silence of her penthouse, she began to hear whispers, echoes of betrayal, of names she once trusted. Power had protected her from everyone except herself. Daniel Cross was the first to sense it. The quiet paranoia creeping through Evelyn's world. Once her loyal partner, now her potential traitor. She began sending coded notes, changing phone lines, burning old files. Every move screamed desperation. Daniel knew her better than anyone, but he also knew what she did to those who disappointed her. And in Evelyn's game, loyalty had an expiration date. The FBI could sense the cracks forming. Frank Daly and Agent Torres began picking up pieces. A call intercepted here, a voice recognized there. Evelyn's perfect empire was bleeding quietly. But Daly didn't celebrate. He knew something was wrong. She was too calculated to make mistakes. He started to wonder if the collapse they were seeing was intentional. Another smoke screen hiding something far bigger. Inside her penthouse, Evelyn sat alone with a gun she never used. Every sound became a threat. Every shadow looked like betrayal. She replayed her past moves in silence, trying to pinpoint where she'd lost control. In her world of mirrors and illusions, paranoia wasn't madness. It was survival. But as she gazed out over the skyline, one thought haunted her. Maybe the empire was never hers to begin with. Then came the phone call. A voice from her past, familiar, trembling, afraid. Daniel Cross confessed he had spoken to the FBI. In that single moment, Evelyn's silence shattered. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She simply hung up and closed her eyes. Somewhere deep inside, she already knew this day would come. The empire she built on trust had finally betrayed its creator. The Queen had made her final move, and this time, she was her own checkmate. The FBI called it Operation Veil. Their mission was simple. Expose Evelyn Moreau. But what they didn't realize was that Evelyn had already written the rules of their investigation. Every lead, every name, every trace led back to nothing. She fed them ghosts, while her empire rebuilt itself beneath their feet. The Bureau was chasing a shadow, and the shadow was laughing. Frank Daly and Agent Torres pushed harder. Surveillance teams, wiretaps, informants, all chasing whispers. Each time they thought they had her cornered, she was already gone. Daly began to believe the rumors that she wasn't just evading the law, she was rewriting it. Evelyn had become the architect of her own myth, and every failure only made her legend grow stronger. Behind her calm smile, Evelyn's world was unraveling. Offshore accounts frozen, her allies arrested, her name whispered in government halls. But she stayed ahead through deception, layered on deception. She burned every record, erased every photograph, and left behind only questions. Her greatest weapon wasn't money or fear. It was uncertainty. The task force thought they had her. A phone trace led them to a villa outside Miami. Helicopters circled, agents moved in, and the world held its breath. But inside the house they found only empty rooms, champagne glasses, and a single recording of Evelyn's voice. "You almost had me." It was the perfect insult. She was still in control, even in absence. For months, Evelyn vanished completely. The FBI raided her safe houses, froze her assets, interrogated her allies. Nothing. It was as if she dissolved into thin air. Yet somewhere in Europe, new shell companies began to surface, bearing the same coded signatures as hers. To those who knew her, it was a message. You can't arrest a ghost. When the empire finally cracked, it didn't explode. It quietly disintegrated. One by one, her hidden networks fell apart. Men who swore loyalty turned informants. Offshore accounts went dark. The FBI launched simultaneous raids in New York, Chicago, and Miami, tearing apart the ghost she'd spent a decade building. Yet, not a single trace of Evelyn Moreau appeared. Every document, every fingerprint, every voice, gone. The woman who owned the Underworld vanished without a sound. Frank Daly stood among the ruins of her empire and felt no victory. He realized he had never truly known who he was chasing. Every alias, every address, every photo, fabricated. The woman at the center of the largest criminal network in America might have been a myth she built herself. He began to wonder if Evelyn Moreau even existed at all. In the chaos of those final days, Daniel Cross made his last mistake. He tried to run, carrying what he thought was his escape, Evelyn's black ledger. But when the FBI caught him, they found only blank pages. Evelyn had outsmarted him too. Even her betrayals were part of the plan. Somewhere, she was watching the men who tried to destroy her destroy themselves. Meanwhile, Agent Maria Torres uncovered something strange. A recording buried deep in FBI archives. Evelyn's voice, calm and steady, describing a plan to disappear so perfectly that even death couldn't prove her gone. It wasn't a confession. It was a blueprint for immortality. And somewhere in that final transmission, Maria heard a faint sound. An airplane engine. A week later, a private jet left a small airfield in the Bahamas under a false manifest. On board, a single woman matching Evelyn's description sat by the window, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The plane vanished over the Atlantic without a trace. No wreckage, no radio contact, no goodbye. Whether she died that night or simply vanished again, no one ever knew. The legend of the Queenpin became eternal. The woman who built her power from shadows and then disappeared back into them. Years passed, and the story of Evelyn Moreau faded from official reports, but burned brighter in whispers. Retired agents met in quiet bars, arguing whether she'd escaped or perished. Her name became a myth, a lesson whispered in FBI training rooms. Don't chase ghosts, but legends don't die. They evolve, and Evelyn's legend became a mirror for every ambition too dangerous to admit aloud. In Europe, strange rumors surfaced of a woman funding political campaigns, owning secret galleries, and hosting private dinners for the world's elite. Her name never appeared on paper, but her style was unmistakable. Silent, elegant, precise. If Evelyn survived, she hadn't returned to crime. She had simply traded the underworld for something far more powerful, the upper one. Agent Maria Torres never stopped searching. Even after the Bureau closed the case, she followed faint trails, anonymous donations, forged identities, coded art transactions. Every time she thought she'd found Evelyn, the trail vanished. Yet, deep down, she admired her. The woman who lived without permission, who defied the system designed to cage her. For Maria, Evelyn wasn't a criminal. She was the inevitable evolution of power. Some believe Evelyn died long ago. Others insist she still walks among the world's elite, unrecognizable, untouchable. Her story became myth, her image a ghost haunting the corridors of power. What if she never vanished at all? What if she became everything she once manipulated? A woman who turned crime into art and art into immortality. No one knows where the truth ends and the legend begins. But maybe that was her plan all along. To prove that power isn't about who you are, but what people believe you to be. Evelyn Moreau didn't just outsmart every mob boss in America. She outsmarted history itself. And somewhere, perhaps under a new name, the Forgotten Queen still reigns. Invisible, eternal, untouchable.